Welcome to the Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris. And I just had a cavity filled, so I might be slurring a little bit of Otis style.
And I've got a cold.
Welcome to the show.
So we are limping in today.
I'm confident saying that our recap of this is going to be as good as this episode was.
I can kind of feel like I mean it's a very milquetoast episode.
Couldn't agree more.
No Barney, which is okay, but this show it's just very, very silly and really good, and kind of takes a 3-minute concept and stretches it out over 24 minutes.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So, any other sage thoughts before we dive in?
No, I don't believe that someone could put a car together in that amount of time, but we can get to that later.
That's the only thing about this episode that isn't realistic. But yes. But otherwise, it's very. There's the attention to detail is impeccable. But it's, as we've often said, the worst Andy Griffith show isn't all that bad. So That's the silver lining here. But we opened with Goober pulling the squad car up to the filling station, while Andy is reading a letter from Barney, who has taken his vacation up in Raleigh again.
I've got no other thoughts on this. The first half of this episode, whenever we talk about Goober, I'm debating whether or not I'm going to get mad about his hat. And now is the time that I think I'm going to get mad about it. What is this thing? It's like felt. I don't understand. It's got the weird little cutouts. It looks like a kindergartner made it.
So it's funny you should ask this. Goober wears what is known kind of as a beanie. It's not really a hat. It's more of a cap. I've seen some variations called the Jughead cap, but what they do is it's got the outside flipped and it's a little chopped up. It's really, it is kind of a unique thing that Goober has that is kind of his trademark. I don't think it's a very fashionable hat. I don't think it's a very attractive hat. I would not wear that cap, but that's what he wears.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom on this piece.
Are you gonna get frustrated with this cap? I think it just kind of adds. If you have a guy named Goober, you're not going to put him in.
Doofus.
You're not going to have. Well, if you have a guy named Goober, you're not going to put. He's not going to be walking around in Indiana Jones fedora or wearing shades or anything like that.
Yep. Totally.
So yeah. So Goober tries to read the letter, but Andy offers to read it to him. And Barney has not gotten to sleep before 11:15 any night that he has been there. And it sounds like he's having a wild time staying at the YMCA.
Big boy in the city.
So last weekend, Christopher, I went to a festival out in California called Power Trip. Did I tell you about this?
No, I heard about it a little bit from Becky.
Yes. So Power Trip was this festival. It was 3 nights. The first night was Iron Maiden and Guns N' Roses. The second night was Judas Priest.
You tried to invite me to this months and months ago.
Did I try to invite you?
You did, and I said absolutely not.
It was probably a very halfway offer. Empty offer. I don't think I was thinking you would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last night was Tool and Metallica. The headliners were great shows, but I did not get to bed until between 2 and 3 o'clock every single night. And I wasn't up to, I know you're probably sitting there listening, or if you're listening to this, or you're Christopher sitting right across from you, you're like, well, what were you doing? I was not doing anything other than watching the show and going and catching a shuttle back to my hotel. But it was Palm Springs, and they couldn't start a show before the sun went down because it was so hot. But I haven't stayed up that late for 3 nights in a row, and I can't probably since I was.
Well, I'm proud of you. Was the concert in Indio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a ways back. That's a ways from Palm Springs too.
Yeah. Well, we stayed in Rancho Mirage, just where we stayed.
Got it.
But anyway, I came back with a cold. I'm slowly but surely recovering. I did not do anything. It's not like I was like, oh yeah, we stayed up till all hours of the night partying. I literally was going to bed and brushing my teeth and doing everything that a 45-year-old man is supposed to do before he to
put on your eye mask.
Pretty much. And then, but I've still got a cold. I'm still trying to wake up, and I'm listening to Barney Fife going, I didn't get to bed before 11:15 every night. And I'm like, that sounds lovely. That being said, the phone rings and Andy gets a call, and it turns out his backup deputy can't watch the jail when he goes to Mount Pilot for a day and a half on Wednesday.
And all chaos breaks loose. So begins the plot line of this thrilling episode. This is really a story about temps.
I mean, I think this is the story. I feel like is that anybody who can fill in, who can fill in as a backup deputy in the town of Mayberry is not competent. And all the competent people have too much to do to take up time filling in as backup deputies.
Fair. That's fair. Even if they're full-time deputies, they're maybe not competent.
They have had their struggles with full-time deputies not being very competent either. But Goober volunteers and then begs Andy to let him watch the jail until Andy agrees. Excuse me. When he leaves, he gives Andy a see you Wednesday and a snack. I mean, but Andy doesn't want to do this, but I don't think Andy really has any options at this point.
See you next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday. So Andy comes to the jail on Wednesday, and of course Goober isn't there. And he calls Wally and learns that he is at the filling station. And Andy says he'll come to him. For having to go to a day and a half conference in Mount Pilot, Andy seems to have a lot of time on his hands before heading out of town.
Yeah. I feel like Mount Pilot's 4 minutes away? Like, just go there, do the one meeting you need to do, and come back and call it your lunch break. My goodness.
I mean, they do talk about going. I mean, at Mount Pilot, it's either like, oh, I can get there and back in an afternoon, or I can get there and back in 30 minutes, or I got to block off an entire day. I can't.
An entire week is shot. Yeah,
an entire week is shot. Mount Pilot is like, it is just like it's like a very nebulous place to get to. It's sometimes could take 20 minutes, could take 4 hours. You just never know.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So basically, he gets there and he tells Goober he needs to get over to the courthouse, and Goober says he will as soon as he fixes Gilly Walker's carburetor. And apparently, Gilly drives fast and he doesn't take care of his car.
Classic. That's me. I was borrowing my mom's car, and it's so much faster than mine. As I was like accelerating and doing like cool. As I've talked about, I've been watching a lot of Fast and the Furious, and then the check engine light went on, and she was like, "This is because you're driving." I was like, "Nah, maybe."
What does your mom drive? Like a Cutlass Supreme or she?
We had when I was a Cutlass, yeah, Oldsmobile Cutlass. That was what I had. My dad had an old one of those, like in 1980s when I was growing up, and he told me it was my car, and then he sold it. And then I got like a basketball out of it and he told me that that's what he sold it for.
Really, if I hadn't met your dad and I didn't know who your dad was, that would sound like what a sad story from Christopher's childhood that he sold his car and he gave him a basketball for it.
Yeah.
So that's funny. So Goober gets a call and he tells the person he can't help them, but he gives them directions over the phone. And then the punchline is that he says, "Okay, Alice," when he hangs up. I'm kind of like, the laugh track, in my opinion, should have started as he was giving instructions over the phone, because it's ridiculous. You're like, "Oh, yeah, you're just going to relay this to me over the phone, and that's all I got to do? Okay, thanks, sure. I can go take care of this on my own," because it's pretty complicated stuff.
Yeah.
But back in the Taylor household, Andy is getting ready to leave, and he gets a phone call, and it turns out Goober is not at the courthouse, so Andy heads over there. And he finds Goober at the courthouse being yelled at by Gilly over his carburetor. I don't like Gilly, and I got to be honest with you. If I had somebody like this, I'd be like, you know what, Gilly? Take it to Mount Pilot.
You. I'm a deputy now.
Or I'd just be like, Gilly, take it to Mount Pilot.
Yeah. Good luck getting your car there.
Good luck getting your car there. It could take you 20 minutes or 4 hours, and you just get away from me. But he doesn't do that. Gilly's played by Larry Hovis, who is best remembered for playing Sergeant Andrew Carter on Hogan's Heroes. And Andy tells Goober he will have Aunt B watch the courthouse. But later,
this is the sensible response.
Oh, it's a very sensible.
Is this when Aunt B says the sexist thing? It would be better if a man were there.
I don't know
that's
why.
A little later.
I think she does say it. I think she says it to me. I think she says it because she feels sorry for Goober.
Oh, one day we'll get you, Aunt B.
I mean, I think the thing of it is like, I'm always kind of like, if you feel sorry for someone, the solution is not to give them greater responsibility. If you feel sorry for them, that's a greater issue. If you feel sorry for them, you need to basically figure out a way to help them improve their way in life. But just giving them more responsibility isn't the way to go about it. So later, Andy's about to leave, and Goober shows up and says the carburetor is fixed, and he convinces Andy to give him another chance. And Goober is walking to the courthouse, and Gilly pulls up and says the car is not working.
So you keep repeating carburetor. Why don't you just say borator? Because we know it's for a car.
But it's called a carburetor.
I'm just kidding. It's not a truck burator.
No, your contributions to this podcast are always so invaluable. Thank you.
That's the Novocaine coming through.
So Gilly pulls up and says it's not working. And I got to be honest with you. I'd just be like, Gilly, I don't know what to tell you. Put some sawdust in it. I mean, I would just be like, Gilly,
put some sawdust in it. Yeah.
I'd be like, Gilly, leave me alone. Just
take him to Danny DeVito and Matilda. Just run back the speedometer.
I would just like just go away, Gilly. I don't know what else to tell you. But Goober says he'll drive Goober to the courthouse where he can work on it. And we dissolved a Goober running the engine in the courthouse.
This is cool looking. I like this.
Which is cool looking. Might be a little dangerous to run an engine inside an enclosed area.
Pre-carbon monoxide.
Oh, okay. So those old cars were so much safer. They didn't emit carbon monoxide. Wonder where we got away from that.
We didn't invent greenhouse gases until Silent Spring came out, which I think was late 70s. And then that's when all of a sudden we invented it. We willed it so it would be so. That's how climate change started.
I'm really so confident at what your generation.
Anybody actually has that take? They believe that climate change is happening and real, but they believe that we manifested it by starting it, by recognizing it, and then that's when the gases came out.
Probably.
Well, write into us if you do agree. I'd love to find out.
People believe all kinds of stuff. But no, I mean, obviously, a little dangerous running a car engine in an enclosed area,
or even a carburetor.
And Floyd just keeps going. Floyd, they just said, I have to wonder if they just said this episode, you know what we need? Let's put Floyd in the center of this. This will keep this moving. And Floyd keeps going, fascinating.
Well, I think they knew they had a stinker. Then they're like, all right, let's put Floyd in.
Yeah. And so both Floyd and Goober agree there's nothing wrong with the engine, and Gilly insists on putting it back in the car and going for a ride. Goober says he can't do that. So the next day, Andy pulls up to the jail to a crowd looking in. He comes in and he sees Gilly's car sitting in the jail with Goober, Floyd, and Gilly looking on as we go to commercial. This episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do a great podcast at a great rate. I was fortunate to get started on this a few years ago, and I've just been very, very pleased with it ever since. I mean, they will edit your podcast. They will do artwork for your podcast. They'll do the YouTube videos for the podcast, and they have a very quick turnaround time once you upload all your material. So I highly recommend it.
I'm pro pod in general. I love bean pods. I like pod hotels. I like pod apples, maybe. But you know what pods I like best? Pod machines.
Pod machines. Me too.
I like them better than podcasts. I honestly don't even really like podcasts that much. So I'm just thankful that you're here.
Why do you do this podcast?
To see your dimples, baby.
To see my dimples. Well, and if you really push hard, my Pod Machine might be able to give you some dimples. I don't know. So go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount.
And that's spelled just like Loaded Goat.
So after the break, Goober explains that he didn't want to leave the courthouse, so he brought it in a piece at a time and rebuilt it. And Floyd said, it was a beautiful thing to watch. And Gilly says it still doesn't work. And this is a bit of a slog. And Andy tells Floyd to get it out now.
But did you feel this though when you were watching this? Like, it's a good, like, this should be a good episode. It's a new thing. It's got physical prop comedy. You're shining a light on a new character. Goober's got quite a bit of screen time. He's the center. We got Floyd. There's no reason that this episode should feel like it's dragging as much as it does.
I think the concept, I've never really been that much of a fan of this episode. I think part of it is, we're 5 seasons in. Andy has obviously the trope of Andy just not having any competent help whatsoever is always like one of those things where you're like, okay, the person Goober is doing this for is probably one of the more obnoxious characters we've seen on this show. And that's saying a lot. Okay. That's saying a lot.
It could have used that to have a better character actor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it could have been somebody. You could have almost switched out this guy for like a Howard Morris character, like Howard Morris playing this character going, I don't know, I hear something, and it's just kind of like, but he's so nice.
Who Howard Morris is?
He plays Ernest T. Bass, but he plays all these other characters too. Yep. So him doing something like that. But no, this guy's like, Goober, you screwed up my car, and I'm kind of like, there is a certain point where a mechanic can just look at it and says, you drive this thing so poorly. I don't have to take this from you.
Yeah, I'm out. I'm out.
So Andy tells Goober to get the car out now, but he can't drive it out, which I'm a little bit surprised that he can't fit it through the double doors. And I'm still surprised that he would still run the car indoors.
Yeah, totally.
You would think, you take the mirrors off, you could probably squeeze that thing out the front.
I don't know. On its side?
I don't know. I think the double doors might be big enough. He's not driving
maybe
a Studebaker.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. But Andy is angry.
It's no cutlass.
No cutlass. It's no cutlass. Andy is angry and he has to run an errand, and he tells Goober when he gets back, this thing better have a good start on getting it out the door. And when Andy does get back, the car is still pretty much intact, but it's in kind of a state of disrepair. And Floyd is sitting in it because he thinks he may buy it. And for the actual production,
which I do enjoy. This part's funny.
This is funny.
I like the position that Floyd's in. He's lower. He looks very feeble like how Opie would look. He's like, can I buy it?
Yeah. And I do kind of like and this isn't always like this because Floyd gets a little more at times cantankerous with folks. I think maybe as his faculties Howard McNear's faculties came back as he recovered more and more from the stroke, at least. Because he would have adversarial relationships with people on the show from, in later episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But I do just like him almost being a funny observer in all of these episodes.
Yeah, I do. He's very, very present recently. Yeah. It's good.
And so for the production, they actually had 3 cars in various stages of being built or taken apart. So that's how they were just able to move everything out like they did. And Andy tells Goober the car better be gone by the morning. And he comes home, and Aunt Bee says she heard the strangest story, which Andy says, oh, it's true. And it turns out that Sheriff Jackson, the head of the State Sheriff's Association, is stopping by to visit. And Andy's worried about being a laughingstock. And he runs over to the jail, and the car is put back together. Before Andy can do anything, Sheriff Jackson stops in and somehow comes to the conclusion that it's a traffic safety exhibit. And he asks Goober if he can do something similar for his jail in Siler City. And Andy immediately jumps in and says they should keep the display up for the next couple of days. Super smart. And he starts showing the sheriff around town as we go to commercial.
So this is like when Andy acts like Barney here, right? Like he's in the wrong, and then he's kind of catching a lucky wave and then doubles down on it once he realizes that people think he's smart.
Well, but Barney has to be pointed. You have to almost be said, hey, Barney, you're really smart. Andy is just kind of like, I see an opening here and I'm going to take it.
That's true.
Yeah. In the epilogue, Sheriff Jackson and his deputy says goodbye. They say goodbye and they drive away. And Andy kind of invites Goober inside, kind of like almost, it kind of is very friendly. And then he walks in, he sits down, he takes a rifle out, and he points it at Goober. And he tells him to get the car out of the jail as we close.
Very aggressive.
Get it out, and get it out now.
Yeah, very aggressive. Very aggressive. So
yeah, I mean, I think even on a show like the Andy Griffith Show, where they said, "Well, you don't really have to think about it too much." I mean, when the show hums along, it's because all the character aspects are believable. I think you had Goober doing what he was doing for a really obnoxious person.
Yeah, I agree.
For a really obnoxious person who could have just been said. I think if Wally had basically known what was going on, he would have stepped in and said, "Hey, Gilly, treat your car a little better and stop blaming us for everything that goes on."
Totally agree.
And Andy is a little overly cantankerous in this episode.
Yeah, but I get angry. I get tired of things. I get it.
I know you do. I'm just saying
we're not all cool talent.
I know for a fact I have a much greater temper than you. I also know that it also watching how Andy can be the voice of reason all the time in this zany group. And then there are just certain things where you're like, well, the script just calls for him to get really angry. He's just going to get really angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, normally on something like this, and actually I think one of the reasons like this also doesn't ring true, it feels a little strange, is nobody really solves anything in this episode.
No, it's just a like ecosystem.
Yeah, it's kind of like
your time.
Yeah, it's because normally on something like this, Andy would have figured out a way to get the car out of the jail. Yeah, he doesn't. His solution is finally to hold his local mechanic, and backup deputy at gunpoint, and make him get it out, get the car out. So
I hope he at least learned something at CopCon or whatever he went to in Mount Pilot.
I mean, I hope there was a session on what things to look for in a backup deputy, things to look for in a full-time deputy.
Totally.
I don't know if you picked up on any of those, because I'll give you a little hint, like the foreshadowing when Andy leaves at the end of the series and moves away, and during Mayberry RFD, they never hire a new sheriff. Basically, Goober just serves as basically just Goober just serves in that role.
Oh, really? I thought that's when RoboCop took over.
Can you imagine if RoboCop ran Mayberry?
That's kind of what Barney does when he's in charge.
RoboCop has more emotional intelligence than Barney. And I'm not kidding. So, how many whistles would you give this?
5. It's fine. I'm only just keeping it at 5 versus 4 because it's black and white.
All right, I'll give it 5 too. I feel like when we're listening, I feel like for folks listening, one of us has a cold, one of us just had a filling, so just keep that in mind. It's not like this was really not a pleasure to watch. It was just
we're not picking up new listeners at this point. If you're here, it's because you got a massive crush on both of us. We can do no wrong,
or maybe just you. So, any final thoughts?
No, I think no.
Which tooth did you get a filling in?
Oh, thank you. I don't know why. I walked into the dentist and he was like, and he said some number, and I was like, I don't know. I think I pay you to understand this. I trust you completely to handle this situation correctly. I'm just here to open my mouth.
Which was it in the back? Was it in the front?
It was in the back top.
Back top.
But if I'm doing a handstand facing a wall, it's bottom side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Last time I had a root canal, I walked in and I just thought, I'm getting a consult here. And he was kind of like, he goes, well, I think we're going to do a root canal. I was like, okay, so when I scheduled to come back in, he goes, nope, open your mouth. I was like, we're doing this now? We're doing this now? But it was okay because he had the hands of an angel. So it was all right. It worked out okay.
That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't like the episode, I hope you enjoyed Dental Talk. This is a backdoor pilot that we're spinning out.
This Dental Talk with Aaron and Chris, two people who don't know anything about dentistry, but we'll just talk about their experiences at the dentist. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do the rehabilitation of Otis. And until then, Christopher, this podcast was a beautiful thing to watch.
Wasn't it?